Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead as he loaded his old pickup truck with the last of his tools. Another day, another job that barely paid enough to cover his rent. The paint was peeling off his toolbox, and his hammer had seen better days, but these were all he had. His bank account showed $37, and his landlord had already called twice about next month's rent. The construction site had been quiet for weeks. Projects were getting scarce, and the big companies always got the contracts first. Marcus had been doing carpentry for 15 years, ever since he dropped out of high school to help support his sick mother. She had passed away 3 years ago, leaving him with nothing but her memory and a pile of medical bills he was still paying off. As he drove through the wealthy part of town, Marcus couldn't help but stare at the massive houses with their perfect lawns and expensive cars. He had worked on a few of these homes over the years, always through a subcontractor who paid him half of what the job was really worth. The owners rarely spoke to him directly, treating him like he was invisible. His phone buzzed on the dashboard. Another bill collector, no doubt. Marcus let it go to voicemail. He had gotten good at avoiding calls he couldn't afford to answer. His old Nokia phone was practically falling apart, held together with electrical tape, but it still worked for the few calls he actually wanted to take. The radio crackled with static as he drove down Maple Street, one of the most expensive roads in the city. Mansions lined both sides, each one worth more than he would make in 10 lifetimes. Marcus had always wondered what it would be like to live without worrying about money, to buy groceries without counting every dollar, to fix his truck without having to choose between food and transportation. As he approached a sharp curve, something caught his eye. A car had gone off the road and crashed into a tree. Steam was rising from the hood, and he could see someone moving inside. Marcus didn't hesitate. He pulled over immediately, his truck's brakes squealing in protest. His first thought wasn't about who might be in the car or whether they could afford to help themselves. Someone was hurt, and that was all that mattered. The expensive black sedan was crumpled against an old oak tree. The front end was completely smashed, and broken glass sparkled on the asphalt like deadly diamonds. Marcus could smell gasoline, which made his heart race. He had seen enough accidents to know that cars could catch fire and time was running out. He grabbed his emergency kit from behind his seat and ran toward the wreckage. Inside the car, he could see a woman slumped over the steering wheel. Her long, dark hair covered her face and there was blood on her forehead. She was wearing what looked like an expensive business suit, but Marcus didn't care about her clothes. All he could think about was getting her out safely. The driver's door was jammed shut from the impact. Marcus tried pulling on the handle, but it wouldn't budge. He could hear the woman groaning softly, which was both terrifying and relieving. At least she was alive. He ran to the passenger side, but that door was also stuck. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger, and Marcus knew he was running out of time. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his hammer from his toolbox, the same worn hammer that had built countless cabinets and fixed hundreds of problems over the years. He used the claw end to break the remaining glass from the passenger window, clearing away the sharp pieces so he wouldn't cut the woman as he pulled her out. Carefully, Marcus reached inside and felt for a pulse on her neck. It was weak but steady. Her breathing was shallow, and there was a nasty cut on her forehead that was bleeding freely. He had taken a first aid course years ago when he worked construction, and he remembered that head injuries could be serious. She needed to get to a hospital, fast. Marcus gently shook the woman's shoulder, trying to wake her up. "Ma'am, can you hear me? I'm going to get you out of here." Her eyes fluttered open, revealing bright green eyes that seemed confused and frightened. She tried to speak, but only a weak whisper came out. Blood was trickling down from the cut on her forehead, and Marcus could see that her left arm was bent at an odd angle. "Don't try to move," Marcus said softly, his voice calm despite the panic he felt inside. "I'm going to help you, but I need to be very careful." The smell of gasoline was getting stronger, and he could hear a strange hissing sound coming from under the hood. Every second counted now. He reached across the woman to unbuckle her seatbelt, being as gentle as possible. Her expensive suit was torn and dirty, but Marcus noticed her jewelry first. a diamond necklace that probably cost more than his annual income, and a watch that looked like something from a magazine. But none of that mattered right now. She was just another human being who needed help. "My phone," she whispered, pointing weakly toward the floor. Marcus could see an expensive smartphone that had been thrown from her purse during the crash. The screen was cracked, but it might still work. He grabbed it and quickly dialed 911, his hands shaking as he spoke to the dispatcher. "There's been a car accident on Maple Street near the big oak tree. One person injured, possible head trauma and broken arm. The car smells like it's leaking gas. We need an ambulance and fire department right away." The dispatcher assured him help was on the way and told him to keep the victim calm and still. Marcus looked at the woman again. Despite her injuries, there was something about her that seemed familiar, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her before. Maybe she had been on the news or in the paper. Rich people often were, though Marcus rarely had time to follow such things. He was too busy trying to survive each day to worry about the lives of millionaires. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, hoping to keep her conscious until help arrived. She looked at him with those green eyes, and for a moment he saw something unexpected there. Not the usual look of superiority he was used to from wealthy people, but genuine gratitude and vulnerability. "Sarah," she whispered. "Sarah Chen. Thank you for stopping. Most people would have just driven by." Her voice was getting a little stronger, which Marcus took as a good sign. He had positioned himself so he could easily pull her from the car, if the gasoline smell got worse, but for now it seemed safer to keep her still. "I'm Marcus," he replied, taking off his worn flannel shirt and gently pressing it against the cut on her head to stop the bleeding. "And no, most people wouldn't have driven by. You just haven't met the right people." His shirt was old and had paint stains on it, but it was clean and would work to control the bleeding until the paramedics arrived. Sarah winced as he applied pressure to the wound, but she managed a small smile. "You're wrong about people," she said softly. "I've been driving this road for 3 years and dozens of cars have passed by since my accident. You're the first one to stop." Her words hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had always believed that most people were good, that they would help if they saw someone in trouble. Maybe she was right, though. Maybe he was naive. In the distance, Marcus could hear sirens approaching. The ambulance and fire truck were getting closer, their wailing sounds echoing off the expensive houses that lined the street. He felt relieved. That professional help was almost there, but he also felt proud that he had been able to help this woman when she needed it most. "The paramedics are almost here," Marcus told Sarah, still keeping pressure on her wound. "Just hang in there a little bit longer. They'll take much better care of you than I can." She nodded weakly, but her eyes never left his face. There was something in her expression that made him uncomfortable, as if she were studying him, trying to figure something out. The paramedics arrived within minutes, followed closely by the fire department. Marcus stepped back as the professionals took over, but Sarah grabbed his hand with her good arm before he could move away completely. Her grip was surprisingly strong, for someone who had just been in a car accident. "Please don't leave yet," she said urgently. "I need to know how to reach you. I want to thank you properly." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had just done what any decent person would do, nothing special, but there was something in her voice that made him stay. One of the paramedics, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, quickly examined Sarah while asking Marcus what had happened. He explained how he found her, what condition she was in, and how long she had been conscious. The paramedic nodded approvingly at his first aid efforts and told him he had probably saved Sarah's life by stopping the bleeding. As they carefully moved Sarah onto a stretcher, she kept looking back at Marcus. The firefighters were checking the car for any fire hazards and declared it safe, though they recommended having it towed immediately. The expensive sedan was completely destroyed, probably worth more than everything Marcus owned combined. "Sir," one of the paramedics called to Marcus. "She's asking for your contact information. She seems pretty insistent about it." Marcus felt even more uncomfortable. He didn't have much to offer by way of contact information, just his old phone number and a mailing address for a rundown apartment building on the wrong side of town. He walked over to the ambulance where Sarah was being prepared for transport. Her head was properly bandaged now and her arm was in a temporary sling. She looked much better than she had in the car, though she was obviously still in pain. "I don't need any thanks," Marcus said quietly. "I'm just glad you're okay." Anyone would have done the same thing. But even as he said it, he remembered her words about all the other cars that had passed by without stopping. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe not everyone would have helped. "Please," Sarah said, reaching into her damaged purse with her good hand. She pulled out a business card that was slightly bent but still readable. "Take this. I insist on paying for the damage to your shirt at least, and I'd like to send you something to show my appreciation." Marcus looked at the card and felt his heart skip a beat. The card read Sarah Chen, Chief Executive Officer, Chen Industries. Marcus had heard of Chen Industries. It was one of the biggest construction companies in the state. They built shopping, malls, office buildings, and luxury housing developments. They were the kind of company that hired firms like the one Marcus used to work for before the economy got bad and jobs became scarce. "You're the CEO of Chen Industries?" Marcus asked, unable to hide his surprise. He had just pulled the head of one of the most successful companies in the region out of a car wreck. No wonder she had seemed familiar. Her picture was probably in the business section of the newspaper all the time. Sarah nodded, wincing as the movement hurt her head. "I am. And you just saved my life, Marcus. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stopped. The doctors will want to examine me thoroughly, but I have a feeling I'm going to be just fine, thanks to you." The paramedic was ready to close the ambulance doors and take her to the hospital. "I don't want anything in return," Marcus said firmly. "I'm not looking for a reward or anything like that. I just hope you get better soon." But Sarah was already pressing the business card into his hand as the ambulance doors closed. Through the small window he could see her mouth the words, "Call me," before the vehicle pulled away, sirens wailing. Marcus stood in the road for a long time after the ambulance disappeared, staring at the business card in his hand. Sarah Chen, CEO. He had heard stories about her company, how they paid their workers well, how they never cut corners on safety, how they had grown from a small family business into a major corporation in just 20 years. A tow truck arrived to haul away the destroyed sedan, and Marcus helped direct traffic around the accident site until the police officer told him he could go. As he walked back to his pickup truck, he noticed that several people had come out of their expensive houses to see what all the commotion was about. Now that the emergency was over, they were curious. But where were they when Sarah needed help? Marcus tucked the business card into his wallet next to his last $20 bill. He probably would never call her. What would he say? "Hi, I'm the broke carpenter who pulled you out of your car." People like Sarah Chen lived in a different world, and once she recovered from her injuries, she would probably forget all about him. That was how these things usually worked. 3 days passed and Marcus tried to put the accident out of his mind. He had bigger problems to worry about, like finding work and paying his bills. His landlord had called twice more, and the electric company had sent a final notice. If he didn't find a job soon, he would be homeless within 2 weeks. He spent his mornings driving around the city, stopping at construction sites and home improvement stores, looking for any kind of work. Most contractors weren't hiring, and the ones who were offered wages so low that Marcus couldn't afford to take them. Gas money alone would eat up half of what they were paying. On Wednesday afternoon, his phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, so Marcus almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer at the last second. "Hello? Marcus? This is Sarah Chen. We met on Maple Street a few days ago." Her voice sounded much stronger than it had in the wrecked car, though Marcus could still hear a slight hesitation, as if talking still caused her some discomfort. "Oh, hi," Marcus said, surprised. "How are you feeling? Are you okay?" He had genuinely been worried about her, wondering if her injuries were more serious than they had appeared. Head injuries could be tricky, and that cut had been bleeding pretty badly. "I'm much better, thank you. The doctors say I have a mild concussion and a broken wrist, but I'll make a full recovery. They told me that if you hadn't stopped the bleeding and kept me calm, things could have been much worse." Sarah paused, and Marcus could hear voices in the background as if she were calling from an office. I'm glad you're okay, Marcus replied honestly. That's all that matters. He was standing in his tiny kitchen, looking out the window at the apartment complex parking lot. A few of his neighbors were sitting on their porches trying to catch whatever breeze they could in the late afternoon heat. Marcus, I meant what I said about thanking you properly. I've been thinking about our conversation, about how you said anyone would have stopped to help, but I've been asking around, and the police told me that at least 15 cars passed my accident before you arrived. You were the only one who stopped. Marcus felt a familiar, uncomfortable feeling in his stomach. He didn't like being praised for doing what he considered basic human decency. I just did what felt right, he said simply. You don't owe me anything, Miss Chen, really. Please call me Sarah, and I disagree. I owe you my life, quite possibly. But more than that, I'm curious about you. In our brief conversation, you mentioned that you're a carpenter. Are you currently working on any projects? The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He had been unemployed for 3 weeks now, and his savings were completely gone. But he was too proud to admit his financial situation to this successful businesswoman. I'm between jobs at the moment, he said carefully. I see. Well, as it happens, Chen Industries has several projects that require skilled carpentry work. Custom cabinetry, detailed trim work, that sort of thing. Would you be interested in discussing a possible contract? Sarah's voice was professional, now businesslike, but Marcus could still hear warmth in it. Marcus felt his heart racing. Chen Industries was known for paying top dollar for quality work, and their projects were the kind that could set a carpenter up financially for months. But he was also suspicious. This felt too much like charity, and his pride wouldn't let him accept handouts even from someone whose life he had saved. I appreciate the offer, Marcus said slowly, but I don't want you to feel like you have to give me work just because of what happened on Maple Street. I'm sure you have regular contractors you work with, people with bigger crews and more resources than I have. Sarah laughed, a sound that was pleasant despite the slight rasp from her injuries. Marcus, I didn't build a successful company by making business decisions based on sentiment. If I'm offering you work, it's because I believe you can do the job well. But I understand your hesitation. Would you be willing to meet with me to discuss the details? No commitment, just a conversation. Marcus looked around his sparse apartment, at the bills piled on his tiny kitchen table, at the empty refrigerator that he couldn't afford to fill. He thought about his pride versus his survival, and survival won. When would you like to meet? How about tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock at my office? Do you know where Chen Industries is located? Sarah gave him an address in the downtown business district in one of those gleaming office towers that Marcus had helped build years ago when he worked for a larger company. I'll be there, Marcus said, though he wondered what he would wear to a meeting with a CEO. His best clothes were work clothes, and his only suit was 15 years old and didn't fit properly anymore. But maybe that was okay. He was a carpenter, not a businessman, and there was no point in pretending to be something he wasn't. Marcus spent the evening cleaning his old suit and polishing his worn work boots. It was the best he could do, and he hoped Sarah would understand that he was a working man, not someone who belonged in corporate boardrooms. He barely slept that night, alternating between excitement about potential work and worry that this was all some kind of mistake. The Chen Industries building was impressive, 30 floors of glass and steel reaching into the morning sky. Marcus had to crane his neck to see the top as he stood on the sidewalk, feeling completely out of place. Men and women in expensive suits walked briskly past him, talking on phones and carrying leather briefcases. He clutched his old toolbox in one hand, wondering if he should have left it in the truck. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with a reception desk that looked like it cost more than Marcus made in a year. A young woman with a perfect smile directed him to the elevator and told him to go to the 28th floor. As the elevator climbed, Marcus watched the city shrink below him through the glass walls, feeling more nervous with each passing floor. Sarah's office was at the end of a long hallway lined with awards and photographs of completed projects. Marcus recognized several buildings from around the city: shopping centers, office complexes, and luxury housing developments that Chen Industries had built. The secretary outside Sarah's office was polite but clearly surprised by Marcus's appearance. She probably wasn't used to seeing men in work boots and 20-year-old suits. "Marcus Rodriguez?" she asked, checking her appointment book. "Ms. Chen is expecting you. Please go right in." She pressed a button, and the heavy wooden door to Sarah's office opened with a soft electronic click. Sarah was standing behind a massive desk, looking much better than she had 3 days earlier. The cut on her forehead was covered by a small bandage and her left wrist was in a cast, but she was dressed impeccably in a navy blue business suit. The office itself was larger than Marcus's entire apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a spectacular view of the city. "Marcus, thank you for coming," Sarah said warmly, walking around the desk to shake his hand. Despite her expensive clothes and impressive office, her grip was firm and genuine. "Please have a seat. Can I offer you some coffee?" Marcus sat in one of the leather chairs facing her desk, setting his toolbox carefully on the floor beside him. "Coffee would be great, thank you." Sarah pressed a button on her phone and asked her secretary to bring in 2 cups. Marcus tried not to stare at the luxury surrounding him. The original paintings on the walls, the thick carpet, the massive bookshelf filled with architectural and business texts. "I hope you don't mind me saying this," Sarah began, settling into the chair across from him rather than behind her intimidating desk. "But you look nervous. This is just a conversation between 2 people who met under unusual circumstances. I'm not going to judge you or try to intimidate you." Marcus managed a small smile. "I've never been in a CEO's office before. This is all pretty overwhelming." He gestured toward the windows and the expensive furnishings. "I'm more comfortable with sawdust and construction sites." "I understand completely. 20 years ago, I was more comfortable in those places too. My father started this company in our garage, building custom cabinets and doing home repairs. I grew up around carpenters and contractors." Sarah's secretary brought in the coffee, and Marcus noticed that it was served in real china cups with silver spoons. "Really?" Marcus asked, genuinely surprised. "I had no idea Chen Industries started as a carpentry business." He had assumed Sarah came from money, that she had inherited her success rather than earned it. Her office and manner suggested someone who had never worried about paying bills or finding work. Sarah nodded, sipping her coffee. "My father, David Chen, immigrated here with nothing but his tools and his skills. He taught me everything about woodworking and construction before I ever learned about business and finance. I still remember the smell of his workshop, the sound of his saw cutting through oak and maple." For the first time since entering the building, Marcus felt himself relaxing. This wasn't charity after all. This was one carpenter talking to another, even if one of them now wore expensive suits and ran a multi-million-dollar company. "The reason I asked you here," Sarah continued, "is that we have a project that requires someone with exceptional attention to detail and old-school craftsmanship. We're renovating the Grandview Hotel downtown. It's a historical building that dates back to 1892. The millwork is incredibly intricate, and most of our regular contractors want to replace everything with modern materials. We need someone who understands the value of preserving the original craftsmanship." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. He had walked past the Grandview Hotel many times and had always admired its elaborate woodwork and carved details. It was exactly the kind of project he had dreamed of working on, something that would challenge his skills and create something beautiful that would last for generations. "That sounds like an incredible project," Marcus said honestly. "But I have to ask, are you offering me this job because I helped you on Maple Street? Because if you are, I appreciate the gesture, but I don't want charity." Sarah set down her coffee cup and looked directly into Marcus's eyes. "I'm going to be completely honest with you, Marcus. After you saved my life, I was curious about who you were. I had my assistant do some research." Marcus felt his stomach drop, wondering what kind of investigation she had conducted and what she might have discovered about his financial troubles. "What I learned," Sarah continued, "is that you have an exceptional reputation among the contractors who have worked with you. 3 different project managers told me you're the best finished carpenter they've ever seen. One of them said you can make a piece of pine look like mahogany, and that your attention to detail is unmatched." Marcus felt a flush of pride mixed with embarrassment. He had always taken satisfaction in his work, but he hadn't realized that people in the industry had taken notice. Most of the time, he felt invisible on job sites, just another worker trying to get through the day. However, Sarah went on, they also told me that you're stubborn about working alone, that you turn down jobs if you think the client is cutting corners on materials or safety. One contractor said you walked off a job because they wanted you to use particle board instead of real wood for built-in shelving. That's true, Marcus admitted. I don't put my name on work that won't last. People trust carpenters to build things that will be around for their grandchildren. I can't compromise on that. He wondered if his principles had just cost him this opportunity. Sarah smiled broadly, the first genuinely happy expression Marcus had seen from her. That's exactly why I want you for the Grandview project. We could hire a crew that would rush through the job and give us something that looks good enough for the opening ceremony. But I want to restore that building to its original beauty, using the same techniques and materials that the craftsmen used in 1892. She stood up and walked to her desk, returning with a thick folder of photographs and blueprints. These are pictures of the original millwork taken before years of paint and renovations covered up the details. Look at this craftsmanship, the hand-carved rosettes, the intricate moldings, the way each piece flows seamlessly into the next. Marcus studied the photographs, feeling the same excitement he had experienced as a young man when he first discovered his love for woodworking. The hotel's interior had been magnificent, with carved ceiling beams, elaborate staircases, and custom millwork that showed the skill of master craftsmen. It would be the project of a lifetime to restore something so beautiful. The budget for this phase of the renovation is $200,000, Sarah said quietly. The timeline is 6 months. You would be working directly with our architects and historical preservation specialists, but the carpentry decisions would be yours to make. You would need to hire and supervise a small crew, but you would be the lead craftsman. Marcus felt dizzy. $200,000 was more money than he had made in the past 3 years combined. It would solve all his financial problems, allow him to buy proper tools, maybe even rent a workshop. But more than the money, it was the chance to work on something truly special, to use his skills to bring a piece of history back to life. There's one condition, Sarah added, and Marcus's heart sank, waiting for the catch that would make this dream job impossible. You have to promise me that you'll do the work exactly the way you think it should be done. No shortcuts, no compromises, no worrying about whether you're spending too much time on details that most people won't notice. I want you to build this restoration the same way you would build something for your own home. Marcus looked up from the photographs, hardly believing what he was hearing. Are you serious? You want me to take as much time as I need and use the best materials available? Most clients wanted everything done as quickly and cheaply as possible. No one had ever asked him to focus on quality over speed. I'm completely serious. My father always told me that good work costs money, but great work is an investment that pays dividends for generations. The Grandview Hotel is going to be a landmark in this city for the next 100 years. I want people to look at that millwork and know that it was crafted by someone who truly understood the art of carpentry. Marcus extended his hand to Sarah, and she shook it firmly despite the cast on her wrist. You have a deal, he said, his voice thick with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. I promise you won't regret this. As Marcus left the Chen Industries building that morning, his toolbox felt lighter than it had in years. He had gone from broke and desperate to having the opportunity of a lifetime, all because he had stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. But more than that, he had discovered that there were still people in the world who valued craftsmanship and integrity, who understood that some things were worth doing right, regardless of the cost. The Grandview Hotel project would take 6 months to complete, and every day Marcus would arrive early and stay late, pouring his heart and soul into every piece of wood he shaped and every joint he cut. When it was finished, visitors would marvel at the beautiful millwork and intricate details, never knowing that it had all started with a simple act of kindness on a quiet street lined with mansions.